What's up, Flannelverse? We are back for another two-game Monday Night Football slate. We've got the Dolphins hosting the Jets and the Broncos hosting the Bengals. Should be a fun two-gamer. As usual, going to be going position by position with Adam. Quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, defenses. There are no kickers on this slate. We're only going to be talking about the two-gamer. I will be going live again later tonight to talk about Showdown a little bit as well. So prior to lock, I'm going 5 Eastern, 4 Central, going to be going live again. But we're going to start here, going again position by position with Adam from Run the Sims. Adam, how did your Sunday go?
Not great. I thought I played pretty well. I got killed by a few chalk pieces going off, namely Ashton Genty. But it was one of those where, like, in large field stuff, I lost a little bit, pretty much broke even, came out slightly ahead in large field stuff on FanDuel, had a sweat in the millie until the second half of the 4 p.m. games, but just got smoked in like the higher stakes single entry stuff. So didn't have a good day overall. But another day, I haven't had a week, knock on wood, haven't had a week yet this season where, like, I look at what I did and I'm just like, what the fuck was I doing? Like, how would that ever work? They're frustrating, but definitely prefer still, having those slates where it's like, damn, I was close. If this went right and, that went right, things would have been really good, as opposed to the, wow, everything was horrible.
Yeah, I actually asked you without remembering that we were talking throughout the day yesterday about your sweat in FanDuel. Seemed like it was pretty live for a while. Would have needed a lot to go right, obviously, and you were kind of fading a lot in the afternoon games, but not fading that much because it was like you had done really well at running back. So it was like Christian McCaffrey really needed to go off to beat you, or Ashton Genty, as it were. You had some nice outs there. I never really had a sweat yesterday. My best lineup by far in the early slate had Darnell Mooney. Actually, my 2 best lineups in the early slate were all great except for had Darnell Mooney, who was knocked out in the first half.
Oh, I didn't realize he got hurt.
Yeah, he got hurt in the first half. So yeah, all of mine were like Penix triple stacks. I had some Penix triple stacks with Drake London and Kyle Pitts, who both did awesome, and Darnell Mooney. So that kind of ruined the whole thing there. Honestly, it's been a pretty tough week for me overall. Last night went horribly for me. The Packers Cowboys game, I just never really had much of a sweat. It started off going like I thought it was at least going how I thought it was going to, like how I told other people to play, which is I'm just jamming the Packers because I don't think the Cowboys are gonna be able to do anything against this Packers defense. Started off well, like for like the first half of the first quarter, and then it was like, nope, apparently this Packers defense not as good as I thought they were. The Cowboys were awesome against them.
Yeah, I had too much Brandon Aubrey, which held me back. I was well over the field on Jacobs, which was obviously good. Could have been better, but was obviously good. Well over the field on Pickens. Had like 20% Pickens at captain too. But I had Brandon Aubrey pretty much everywhere and got 8 points, which for him is like the nut low. So that sucked. That held me back. And I was under the field on Dobbs, which he had a game where obviously he's capable of having those kinds of games. It's very annoying when the wide receiver you don't have a ton of is the new goal line, wide receiver instead of the running back you do have a lot of.
Yeah, exactly. I had a ton of Josh Jacobs, and then just getting vultured by Romeo Dobbs for no apparent reason. It kind of seemed like they could have just run it in with Jacobs. Yeah, and that's what I totally envisioned, assumed was going to happen. And I was like, oh, you're just going to throw it to Dobbs over and over. And then the funny thing is, then I also had a lot of Tucker Kraft, who goes down, hits the pylon. I thought he was in, and then they said no, but then Jacobs got that one. So I was like, all right, I guess I'll take that. But that could have gone a lot better than it did for me with Romeo Dobbs scoring 3.
Yeah, it's one of those where you don't have to squint very hard to see that slate where Romeo Dobbs scores 8 fantasy points and Josh Jacobs scores 50.
Exactly, and that would have been pretty great for me. I will say at least I was sweating it out with Fantasy Guru Drew, who was winning $90,000, and literally. Yeah, his only, I mean, he was probably fading more than that, but the most realistic fade was just don't get a lot from George Pickens on that final drive, and then he scored a touchdown, and he was not happy with that, and I've been there. I mean, I was just there last week for much lower sweat. I was sweating $6,000, but 40 seconds left, just had to fade a couple players, and they both got there, so I ended up not getting that one. It's a brutal game we play, these showdown games.
Those final drives, they stick with you.
Yeah. All right, we're going to be doing the 2-gamer here, and we're going to start as usual with quarterbacks. Kind of an interesting one. We've got Justin Fields coming back facing Miami. We've got Tua on the other side, Jake Browning and Bo Nix. Let's start with the first game. Jets-Dolphins, or I mean, we can. Do you want to go game by game here, or do you just want to
Yeah, I
talk
think
about
it's
like who
easier
are
to
your
go game by game.
All right, let's start with Jets-Dolphins. How much interest you have in Fields? How much interest you have in Tua? I'll pull up schedule adjusted. Looks like it is a great matchup, and I'll go over all four here. But great matchup for Bo Nix, fourth best in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. Really strong matchup for Justin Fields against Miami. Looks like it's about eighth best matchup for quarterbacks, and particularly strong for quarterbacks on the ground.
What?
Middling
Oh,
matchup.
never mind. I was reading the chart backwards.
Okay. Middling matchup for Tua, and bad matchup for Jake Browning against Denver. So quarterbacks, starting with the first game, again, Tua and Fields. How much interest do you have?
I mean, a lot. Like, I think these are the second and third best quarterbacks on the slate. I think they're better than Browning. I think they're worse than Nix. A lot here. Yeah, I said we should go game by game because it'll be easier, and then I'm immediately gonna rope in the quarterback from the other game. A lot of the exposure or strategy, I think, with Fields is going to have to do with what you're doing with Bo Nix. For me right now, I'm getting a lot of Bo Nix. Fields and Nix both, with the ownership projections I used, projected to be the two highest quarterbacks, around like 35 to 40%, give or take. So I think both of those numbers are reasonable. Like Justin Fields, obviously you get a lot of rushing upside. You get a lot of rushing touchdown equity. Obviously he can do some things in the passing game. And then you do also with him have one thing that is, I think, in some ways at least, definitely better or preferred on larger slates. On the smaller slate, it doesn't matter as much. But like, if Fields has a good passing game, you pretty much know who the beneficiary is because it's just all going to Garrett Wilson. Whereas with Nix, you do have that extra sort of dartboard of who's he going to throw the touchdowns to, because there's 20 guys it could be. So you do kind of have that. Like, if Fields has a good passing game, you're going to be right most likely about who he throws to. But I think the strategy with Fields really just has to do with like how much Nix you're getting to. And so for me right now, at least, I am under the field on Fields. And it doesn't have to do with Fields. It just has to do with me getting over the field on Nix, playing a pretty similar amount in the aggregate of Fields and Nix, but getting to more Nix. And that could be something. I haven't looked at my wide receiver exposures yet, but it actually could have to do with what I was just saying about, Fields basically just throwing to Wilson on a 2-game slate where you're trying to find ways to get different. You actually have more ways to get different within your Bo Nix stacks than you do your Justin Fields stacks. Very limited things you can do with Justin Fields in the passing game, whereas with Bo Nix in the passing game, you can come up with a million different scenarios.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I guess we'll talk about it as we get to other position. I think there are other ways you could potentially stack up Justin Fields. They keep talking about wanting to get Mason Taylor more involved, getting Breece Hall more involved, and then they get Josh Reynolds, and might be nothing, but also he was like all summer. It was like, yeah, Josh Reynolds, our very clear wide receiver too. Like all indications were that he was their very clear wide receiver too, and he hasn't played yet.
So I have some stuff to say about him when we get to wide receiver, but he ran 100% of routes in week 1. His receiving prop right now is like 18.5 yards. I have no idea how to get his projection that low. I understand that he is the wide receiver 2 for Justin Fields. They're not going to throw a lot, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know how to get it that low. So I would say that, like, I do think Josh Reynolds is relatively interesting on a 2-game slate, but like, you still don't have, with the Broncos, you have multiple tight ends you could use if you wanted to. You have 4 wide receivers that have, legitimate big play threat. But yeah, I do agree that, and again, I haven't even looked to see if I'm playing a lot of him, but I do agree that Josh Reynolds maybe has a bigger role than people realize.
It's funny. I said he hasn't played yet this year because I don't know. Did he score any fantasy points that week? He's a guy that I drafted a lot in best ball, so he got 2 best. Okay, because
I had a good lineup with him. It was like Fields, Wilson, Reynolds, and Reynolds was like 0.1%. So I'm just sitting there like praying that he happens to somehow fall into the end zone.
Yeah, that was he's been obviously disappointing. I've been monitoring his health status because I'm like, I drafted a ton of him in best ball, and a lot, mostly went undrafted. So like, kind of important. If he does well, it'll really help me. And yeah, I thought he had not played yet this year. I forgot that he played week 1. He just didn't really do anything for us.
Which is would you play with secondary Fields receivers?
Yeah, I mean, true. Would you play Fields, or are you getting to any Fields naked?
Certainly wouldn't have a problem with it. As far as, I mean, it's obviously on a 2-game slate. It's kind of difficult because, like, if you're just not playing any Jets, you only have 3 other teams to choose from. But definitely not something that I would have an issue with. Looking at the lineups that I have right now with Fields, it looks like there's at least a Jet in all of them, I think. Sometimes it's just Brees Hall.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have any Justin Fields naked, but wouldn't have an issue with it. I think mostly it's just that, like, you're going to land on a Jet because there's 4
2
teams to
games.
pick players from.
Yeah. Yep. Yep, that makes sense. By the way, while you're coming in, please like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you've not already done so. Trying to get to 6,000 subscribers by the end of the NFL season could use your support. And also, if you want to sign up at Run the Sims, which I am showing on the screen right now, I'll be demonstrating how I'm using it tonight. You can use promo code Neil to get 10% off your first payment on any of their products. Okay. Tua, you said it sounds like he's your 3rd favorite quarterback.
I've the 2nd most exposure to him right now, but yeah,
Okay.
he's my 3rd favorite in terms of, like, quarterbacks that I would like to play. I've kind of just had a Tua problem all season long, and I was a little worried that I was going to be getting tons of him tonight, but at least right now I'm not. I have like 22% right now. Having projected for like 17% ownership, and he is cheap. You know, the problem is you don't get any rushing upside, and that does really stand out when you're talking about a slate that has 4 quarterbacks. Browning will run a little bit. Nix runs a good amount. Fields obviously runs a lot. So it really is amplified that you're not getting that rushing upside with Tua. Any production you get has to be through the air. But at the same time, he is really cheap. He does have good pass catchers. He has guys that you would want to play. He has a relatively concentrated tree to throw to. It's pretty much going to Hill, Waddle, Achane, and to some extent Washington. You have Darren Waller on a pitch count now. I'm not expecting that to really eat into those guys much. So you do have that. You have some of the best playmakers on the slate to throw to. And Miami, I've said this a lot on shows, and it's kind of why I've been having the Tua problem this year. If you go back and look at them last year in the games Tua played, very pass-heavy team. This year, for the most part, pretty pass-heavy team. Even that, I think it was the game against the Patriots, I had a lot of Miami, and I tweeted about it. Like, it didn't end up being a huge game for them. But if you looked at what they actually did, it was they ran like 12 plays in the first half because they couldn't get off the field. And then I don't remember if they had a defensive touchdown or what happened, but they just couldn't get off the field. So they ran like 12 plays in the first half. But the guys that you would expect to produce were producing on like a per play basis. It's just they ran 12 plays. So I think you've kind of gotten some bad luck there. But also, like, obviously you're open for bad luck when you go to a team like Miami that is talented, but also bad. So a lot of things can go wrong, but it's just there's so much talent on the team around Tua. He's cheap. I'm going to get to him. It's not going to feel good for the reasons I said, but I do think he looks fine.
It is also nice with Tua relative to like Nix and Fields that you kind of know if he puts up a big score, he's bringing along multiple pass catchers with him. Or I guess not necessarily multiple, could just be one on the main slate, but probably going to bring along multiple pass catchers with him. So it is nice to like knock out several pieces at once when you play Tua. The matchup so far this year, not as bad as past years. 4 quarterbacks against the Jets. It's a middling matchup here for quarterbacks. You mentioned how much they're passing in terms of pass rate over expectation. The Broncos, kind of surprisingly to me, 4th so far this year. Miami is middle of the pack at 15th. It's also 3 games. Obviously, this is all small sample size. Jets are 32nd, I think, in part just because it's running quarterbacks for the Jets. And then who did I miss? Missed one here. Bengals are 13th. Okay. Second game, Cincinnati, Denver. We got the question, would you play Bo Nix naked at all?
I think it's the same answer as Fields. Like, I'm not going to set a rule against it. On a main slate, I wouldn't really have a problem with it where you have, a ton of other options. On a 2-game slate, I'm just assuming most of my lineups are going to have at least somebody from Denver because there's a lot of good plays from Denver. And obviously, I'm not like going out of my way to not have any of them paired with Knicks. So, yeah, really the same answer as Fields.
Yeah, so
except probably even harder to do because like Fields has 2 guys two teammates that I actually actively want, and then a few others that you can play. Denver, has more appealing options.
Yeah, true. Are you getting to any Jake Browning?
Yeah, I'm around the field at like 8, 9, 10%, somewhere in there.
Okay, and that
Haven't
seems
projected
okay.
it at 12%.
He's for some reason he's 5,700. He's more expensive than Tua is 5,200. Bo Nix is just a little bit more expensive. Fields is also less expensive. So for some reason we have Browning as the second most expensive quarterback on the slate in a really tough matchup with Denver. Nix is did you say he's your third or your first most quarterback?
I have a lot of Nix right now. So we have, basically 35, give or take, percent ownership projected to both Nix and the Fields. And for me right now, it's getting to more Nix at the expense of Fields. I have like 57, 58% right now. And I think it's a couple things. One, he does project a bit better. And, you have the good matchup against the Bengals. You have the highest team total on the slate, et cetera. So he projects better. But then also, again, there's just more variety in the ways that you can build lineups without cannibalizing yourself. There's only so many ways, even if you include Mason Taylor and Josh Reynolds, as viable options, even if you include Tyler Johnson as a viable option, or Arian Smith, whatever, and obviously you're kind of stretching the definition of the word viable there. But there's only so many paths you can take with the Jets before you're kind of just cannibalizing your Justin Fields lineups within a portfolio, I think. So that's probably something else that's having an impact. Is just the ability to be different with the Broncos. I will say one other thing that is probably, and it goes hand in hand, absolutely driving Bo Nix for me right now, because I have now looked at my wide receiver exposure. Marvin Mims is projected for like no ownership. I don't know if that'll change between now and lock. He is questionable, but as a result, I have like 30+% Marvin Mims, which is just going to pull along a lot of Bo Nix. If I think Marvin Mims is like the most misowned, most underowned, relatively low owned guy on the slate, and I'm just jamming him, that's going to bring along his quarterback, obviously. So if ownership were to change on Mims, or Mims gets ruled out or whatever, that could be something that lowers Bo Nix for me as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of surprising if Marvin Mims does come that low owned, but maybe that is just the Q tag. Maybe some places have him out or something.
Yeah. So, and also, I mean, you and I have talked about this in DMs. When I first looked at it, I was like, no way in hell, Marvin, because I have him at 4% in the stuff that I ran. I was like, no way, he's 4%. But on these like small afternoon slates lately, there have been so many of the like number 3 wide receivers, including I think Mims in one week recently, where they just don't get played for whatever reason.
I sort of wonder if it's different on a like Monday slate versus an afternoon slate, because like there's more content around it. So then people are just like drawing attention to these lower owned guys.
Yeah, I would expect that it would be.
Yeah. But again, we don't really know. Yeah, because I assume there's just going to be a lot more content. Like nobody does content on afternoon only slates in the middle of a Sunday, because it's just then it's just people, it kind of gets lost in the shuffle. I still get kind of surprised by it, because I think like there are a lot of pros who are 150 maxing who are probably going overweight on some of the guys. Parker Washington yesterday, some of those players, like they're probably generally going to be overweight if they're using Sims products. So it still kind of surprises me.
You're talking about 3 and 4 game afternoon slates as opposed to 2.
Yeah, true.
So like I assume Marvin Mims comes in at least, assuming he plays, comes in at least, like 8, 9, 10%, which would pull me down at least a little bit. But Alec Pierce was another example on one of, I just remember like 2% owned running 90% routes on a 3-game afternoon slate. It's like, okay, like I don't completely understand what people are doing.
We used to get that on Showdown slates just a few years ago. You get that on, you don't really get that on Showdown slates so much anymore, but sad to lose that. All right, let's move on. Do you have anything else you want to say about quarterbacks?
I kind of skipped over Browning, but he's not based on the track record we have. He's actually not horrible. Clearly, I do think he's the 4th best quarterback on this slate, both in terms of talent and also fantasy production, matchup, etc. He's the 4th projected guy, but he is at least like a competent, viable quarterback based on what we saw in 2023 when he got, I believe it was 7 starts without Burrow. Does give you a little bit of rushing upside, more than Tua, less than Fields and Nix, but can use his legs a little bit. Does obviously have good pass catchers, so he's not one of these backup quarterbacks that like you're absolutely screwed. He can't produce.
it's also a tough matchup. So it's like it's sort of hard to envision it relative to some of these other quarterbacks. But then the game started, and it's like, oh yeah, why did I like assume that this was impossible? Similar to like last night. To me, like last night, it was like, there's no way Dak Prescott is going to have a great game here against the Packers. Like this Packers defense, they're just so good. They shut down every opponent, and then you're watching the game, and it's like, yeah, but Dak's really good. Like, of course, he could have an awesome game. So it's until the game starts a little bit harder to envision. Certainly,
Dak is good. Pickens is really good. I mean, it's the same thing with the Bengals. Like Browning is a good enough quarterback where if he gets time, Jamar Chase is going to get open. T. Higgins is going to get open.
Yeah, I mean, maybe again. Now I'm like Jamar Chase, shadowed probably by Patrick Surtain, so it's going to be tough. But yeah, obviously,
squeaky wheel with T. Higgins too. Not sure if you saw the Jamar Chase quote.
I did, yeah. The you need to ask for the ball if you want the ball. Ask for the ball. Yeah. I mean, it's it sets up for like narrative street sets up really well for T. Higgins. We'll get to receivers. All right, let's talk through the running backs, and again we'll go game by game. We'll go team by team. So we're going to start with the Jets. Breece Hall 5,700 projected for 73% ownership. Braylon Allen, 5% ownership. Isaiah Davis, 0% at 4,000. Obviously, Breece Hall, the big talking point here. At 73%, how much interest do you have in Breece Hall?
So I only had him at 57%, and that got me to 71%. So maybe that means he actually will be 70%. I think Hall looks good. I don't like him as much as Achane on the other side of this game. But you do get a pass catcher in Hall. The problem is that he's likely to be less involved as a pass catcher than Achane because Fields is going to take off and run, obviously, a lot more often than Tua is when he's in trouble. Tua will dump off to Achane more. But Hall is still a pass catching back. So far this season, he's run routes like 40 to 45% of dropbacks. Week 1, he ran routes 43% of the time, 32% week 2, and then he was back to 45% week 3. So he's running routes pretty much half as often as Achane is, give or take. He has been targeted through the first few games a lot on those routes. That's something that I kind of buy into because the Jets should want to use that, as an extension of the running game, but also does it really continue when you have Justin Fields? So kind of go back and forth on that. But overall, I think, Hall looks solid here. I'm getting a lot of him right now. I have like 70%. Again, that was with a 57% ownership projection. So if I were to go with 70%, I probably get a little bit less.
Yeah, that makes sense. I pulled up the game log here so you can see it's sorted by week. So in week 1, just because I haven't looked at this yet, and I was kind of interested to see how it goes because we were kind of getting, the buzz this summer was that it was going to be sort of a backfield committee with Hall and Allen and Davis to some extent. And then week 1, that was sort of the case, but then Breece Hall was just like clearly the best against Pittsburgh. Ended up getting 19 carries, 2 targets in that game on 28% route participation. Week 2, then we had Breece Hall only 10 carries, but then he was up to 42% route participation, still just 2 targets. And then finally, week 3, he did see 6 targets on 36.2% route participation on just 9 carries. So I guess the 6 targets is pretty promising. He did see 15 opportunities there. I don't know. It's such a weird thing with Breece Hall because it's like he's pretty clearly their best running back, but then for some reason they're doing sort of a committee. But then you look at the coach speak, and even the coach speak is like, these are our playmakers. It's Garrett Wilson, it's Mason Taylor is actually the one they name all the time, and Breece Hall. Like those are the 3 players they name all the time. For some reason, they're not giving Breece Hall like a true like RB1 workload, but the talent is obviously there to break it off.
Yeah, and last week was the biggest split that we've had between him and Allen. Allen had 26% rushing market share. Hall was at 39. Hall hasn't gone over a 50% rushing market share yet this year. Obviously, you have to keep in mind that's including quarterbacks. So he's just never going to have the same sort of rushing market share that other running backs are going to have because such a large percentage is going to Tyrod Taylor / Justin Fields. But if I'm projecting it, and I'm assuming that you're going to get kind of just more of what we've gotten overall this season, where it's clearly Breece Hall's backfield. Braylon Allen is basically just there when he needs a breather, and obviously live to steal a touchdown. But we did last week get the biggest split between Hall and Allen that we've had so far this year, which is at least somewhat concerning. Like you would have rather that happened in week 2, and then we went back to normal week 3.
Yeah, it's also like It's concerning from the standpoint of I looked at it at first. I'm like, man, so he didn't get as many carries, but he saw 6 targets. But that's because he had Tyrod Taylor at quarterback. Like that, it is like the one game he got targeted a lot was the game that Justin Fields was out.
Yeah. And
So
Taylor did run a lot for what it's worth. So that did make me feel a little
yeah,
bit better. Taylor did have a 35% rushing market share, which is higher than Fields had either of the first 2 games.
yeah,
So, but yeah, it was a different quarterback targeting him.
yeah. And I think Fields, and this is don't quote me on this, but I think Fields has a history of not really targeting running backs all that much. So a little bit concerning there. But yeah, Breece Hall also like doesn't really need that many touches to put up a big score in terms of
$5,700.
Yeah, right, exactly. In terms of the matchup, it's also pretty strong matchup for running backs against Miami. It looks like it is the 7th best matchup for running backs in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed so far this year. So yeah, if you only put him at 57%, so then you're getting into 70s. Maybe you would flip if you put him at like 73% ownership. You would come in. I'm sure you would get under 73%, or at least that would be my guess.
Yeah, that would be my assumption because right now, where'd my lineups go? So right now that puts me like over the field on him. I'm over the field on Achane, and then I am around the field, I think, on Brown, and it puts me under on Dobbins, who's basically the same price. So I think kind of what is happening for me, Hall and Dobbins, I think is pretty similar to what's happening with like Knicks and Fields, where right now with the ownership that I used when I ran stuff, I have them projected for similar ownership, same price tag, and I think Hall is the better play of the two. So I just get more Hall at the expense of Dobbins. If you tell me that Hall is actually 70% and Dobbins is actually 45, then Dobbins starts to pop up more in some of those lineups in place of Hall.
Yeah, that makes sense. Are you getting to any of Braylon Allen or Isaiah Davis?
No, I will say, like, I think just from looking at my exposures right now, the biggest issue that I have with them as a whole, the thing that I would like to be a little bit different about by the time we get to lock, especially, if you're talking about the mega field, 500K to first, whatever it is on DraftKings. I don't have any of the backup running backs right now. And I think this is actually a slate that sets up really nicely to mix in some of the backup running backs, specifically in this game where you have Ollie Gordon on the Miami side and you have Braylon Allen on the Jets side, because not only like both of those guys are live to steal touchdowns. We know that they'll give Allen some goal line work. We saw, they'll give Gordon some goal line work, but they're both utilized enough sometimes that like they have some standalone value. So I would say my biggest issue overall right now is that I don't have any of the backup running backs. I do think that at very little ownership, mixing in some Braylon Allen makes sense. I think the problem really is the pricing. Like Braylon Allen is $5,200. Ollie Gordon's $4,500, so he's a little bit cheaper. But like, yeah, the ownership gap is massive, but like you really have to do some extra work to like get lineups to pop that are going to tell you that you should be playing the guy that projects for 5 points at essentially the same salary as the guy that projects for 16 or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Here you have 15 for Breece Hall, 5 for Braylon Allen. They're exactly 10 fantasy points apart and just 500 salary. Yeah, you do need to put a little work in to make that happen. Interesting. And no Isaiah Davis, I assume. Let's see. He only played 9 snaps last week, so a little bit
he
tough
actually
to get
barely
there.
ran routes last week.
Yeah. And then on the other side, we have Devin Achane and Ollie Gordon. Achane is 7,000, so a little bit of a price disparity there. Projected for 70% ownership. Ollie Gordon, 4,500, projected for 4% ownership. How much, starting with Achane, how much are you getting there?
Every lineup.
Every lineup, okay.
Yeah, I had Achane projected for 75% ownership. He still ended up in every lineup. I have him as the highest projected guy on the slate. He is just targeted so frequently by design. It's not simply Tua's in trouble, he dumps it off to Achane. Like they look to throw him the ball. The receptions are there. It increases the floor, which is obviously nice on a 2-game slate. So I'm getting him everywhere. The passing game work is huge. He obviously has rushing upside, rushing touchdown equity. Gordon does cut into that, but he doesn't even need rushing touchdowns to have a good enough game for a 2-game slate. So I am getting him everywhere. Again, I would like to be getting to Gordon though, and I'm not. I do think that, obviously you can play Gordon instead of Achane in some lineups, and you just hope that, not that you hope Achane gets hurt, but if he gets hurt, it's really good for you. Or, you just hope Gordon steals a couple of touchdowns. I would say that like it's probably it's an interesting idea too, though. You could play them together, I think, because Gordon is 4,500. Like if he gets 2 goal line touchdowns, you probably want him in a, and then gets, 20 yards or whatever. But like Achane can get there just through receiving work. So I think that you could pair these 2 running backs together and be perfectly fine.
Yeah, no, I think that seems viable. I did not realize to what extent Achane is being used as a pass catcher. 84% route participation, 10 targets, 83% and 9. Like that's like Christian McCaffrey, elite receiver type of numbers, just through the passing game. And then he's also seen 9 carries. No, that's 12 carries last week, 11 the week before. Yeah, that is pretty nice workload there for Devin Achane.
He's basically a more explosive Christian McCaffrey at 7K.
Yeah, it's that seems like a good play. And then Ollie Gordon, yeah, that was we got some coach speak after the game last week, saying that was all by design. They wanted to get Ollie Gordon more involved. He has confidence in what he's doing, always has. Gets more ownership of the entirety of the offense each week and in every practice. I've been happy with where he's at because he's focused on getting better. That was Mike McDaniel. They also did talk about maybe getting Jalen Warren Jalen Wright. There's too many Jalen W's. Jalen Wright involved at some point. I don't know if I really buy it. Maybe they want to get him snaps here and there, but I kind of think it's hopefully just a two running backfield for now. But yeah, he's certainly a running back we can mix in. He's at least cheaper. Like he's only 4,500, whereas Braylon Allen's 5,200. 4% owned seems fine. All right.
Yeah, if I could only play one of Gordon or Allen, I'd rather play Gordon, I think.
Okay. I think I would too. Just cheaper, less ownership. Another interesting one, Bengals and Broncos for the running backs. The Bengals side, not as interesting. We have Chase Brown projected for 54% ownership at 6,600. I don't really think we need to go to, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I need to look at this closer. Brooks and Samaje Perine. We can start with Chase Brown. How much you getting there?
Like 65 to 70%, pretty much, a little over the field. Had him projected for 55%. He hasn't been good this year. Like he's, from an efficiency standpoint, been terrible, but he's getting all of the work. It's kind of the Ashton Genty spot from yesterday. I tweeted during the week when I was working on stuff like, you were hurt by Genty efficiency, you've been hurt by Chase Brown efficiency, but like they're getting all of the work. Jonathan Taylor's another guy where obviously he's been efficient, but like in non-blowouts, he's getting every single touch. So far, rushing market share for Chase Brown, 91%, 94%, 48% last week, but that was the blowout where you ended up getting Taj Brooks touching the ball for the first time. Perine had like a 20% market share. In the 2 competitive games they've played, 91 and 94% rushing market share for Chase Brown. So I guess you could play the blowout angle and get to some Taj Brooks, but like then you're just saying, I think this team scores so few points that this guy plays, but I want him in my lineup. I don't totally know how that works. So, I mean, Chase Brown from an opportunity standpoint is just going to get every touch, I would assume.
Honestly, better workload than I thought for Taj Brooks, which is I hope it continues for my best ball bags. But yeah, five carries last week, 10% route participation, at least somewhat involved. More.
Yeah, how much of that was in the first half?
I'm not going to split it out. What was it not in the first half? Have you already looked at it?
I'm double checking now. I would assume that was all end of game.
Okay. I mean, I can break it out if you want me to. Let's.
Yeah, I mean, I can do it too. I don't.
It's okay. Yeah, I'll let you do it since I don't want to move off of this screen. But yeah, you're probably right because it was 0 snaps in week 2 for Taj Brooks. 0 snaps.
He didn't have a carry in the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, so it was likely in just the second half there. So I was surprised to hear you say that you have mostly interest in the backup running backs in the first game because on the Broncos side, I think RJ Harvey is somebody that I have a lot of interest in if he doesn't get much ownership. But J.K. Dobbins is obviously where you start there. He looks great. This is a really strong matchup against the Bengals. So far, 4th best in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. So J.K. Dobbins is going to look pretty great at 5,800, 52% ownership, or at least he looks great to me. How much are you getting to of J.K. Dobbins?
So I'm not getting a ton right now, but that's again because I had similar ownership projections on him and on Brees Hall. I think Dobbins looks good. Like they're big favorites. There's a good chance that they're just in control of this game. He's only 5,800. I'm getting to 36%, have him projected for like 50-55% ownership. So I am still getting there. I think he looks good. I just have him behind Achane, Hall, and Brown right now. But again, that will be pretty sensitive to exactly how ownership is split out between Brees Hall and Dobbins at the same prices.
Yeah, obviously great matchup. So are you not getting to any RJ Harvey? And it sounds like you don't have a ton of interest there.
I'm not getting to him. I would like to have some. I wasn't even really considering him as like a backup running back when I'd said that. I was thinking of like the true, rushing guys. Yeah, I'm a little surprised I don't have any of him at 4,800 since he does give you some passing game upside as well. And, he is somebody that you would expect to take on a bigger role as the year goes on. Like that's the difference between him and like in my head, even like between him and Allen and Gordon, like Allen and Gordon, you expect to be involved. You expected Gordon to have a bigger workload than like 0, like he had at the beginning of the year. You expect those guys to be involved, but you're not expecting Braylon Allen to like overtake Brees Hall. You're not expecting obviously Gordon to overtake Achane. Not saying you're expecting Harvey to overtake Dobbins, but I think there's a very good chance that by the end of the season and probably well before then, you have a much more just like split workload between Dobbins and Harvey.
Yeah, that's my expectation as well, is that it's going to be much more split as the season goes on. I'm not sure if they're ready to do it just yet. I'll read some of the quotes. So from the 25th, this is in the Coach Speak Index Discord, head coach Sean Payton said, "I love J.K. Dobbins' leadership and focus. He's explosive, he's decisive, he's downhill, he's powerful, he's got good balance. He's been a real good addition for us. We drafted RJ Harvey because of his running skill set, and we knew he could catch the ball. Between he and J.K. Dobbins, we see them carrying the boatload of what we're doing, and then Tyler Bidet helps us on third down. We've looked at how we want to split that, and I think we have a better feel for it." Office coordinator Joe Lombardi on the 26th on whether Lombardi believes in a hot hand approach to the backfield rotation, or is there a plan for the amount of snaps going into a game. He said, "I think both. There is a plan as we mature at the running back position. I think we can just rotate them in, and then there are certain plays that play to J.K. Dobbins' strength a little more, and a few plays that play to R.J. Harvey's strengths a little more. I think we're getting to the point where we can rotate them in, and if someone is seeing the game real well and they have the hot hand, then maybe you feed him a little bit more. They're both really good backs, and you'd like them both to get to 20 carries a game. I think it will be very beneficial to their health to split the load." So I don't know. It's like we've got some plays that work better to J.K. Dobbins' strengths, and then a few for R.J. Harvey. To me, it's like, okay, maybe they don't think he's quite ready to take on. I don't know, but just generally because it's 2-game slate, it's a great matchup, and he's 4,800. I think there's so many outs for RJ Harvey because he's cheap. He's explosive enough that he can just do it on limited snaps. He can just, we've seen him break off a 50-yarder. If he just scores a touchdown on a 50-yarder, you probably want him at 4,800. But then, like you said, like he's the rookie. This is the week of the rookie running back. We've seen all of them kind of break out this week. Wouldn't be that surprising if RJ Harvey jumps on that train as well in this matchup. And then like the Tyler Bidet thing is interesting. They talked about specifically like we needed him in, I think it was the Colts game, because they get a lot of pressure, and so like he was good in those protecting the quarterback situations. I guess we could look at the pressure rate. I'm guessing the pressure rate though for the Bengals is not high, so they might not need to use Tyler Bidet as much. There have also been quotes like we like to use 2 running backs, so like I'd like to just focus on 2, but then we need Tyler Bidet. I kind of think Tyler Bidet could lose his work if they don't really need him. So looks promising. Let me pull up the pressure. Let's see. We go to team OLDL matchups. Oh, but this is from last year, right? These numbers are not updated, I don't think. But I think it's a fair assumption that Cincinnati doesn't get a lot of pressure on the quarterback. Last year they were middle of the pack. I don't know if there's probably somewhere else we could look it up, but regardless, I think that this sets up really well for RJ Harvey, somebody that I'm going to plan on playing at least double digits. I will say I was sort of disappointed to open the expert survey and see that multiple other people also wrote up RJ Harvey as like a contrarian play. So he's coming in at 4 to 6% ownership everywhere, but then everybody's talking about him as like their secret play. So yeah, also could end up getting steamed.
One thing to keep in mind that I think does hurt him a little bit here is that you do still need the raw points. Like
Yeah.
he can have a good point per dollar score, but where are you spending that salary? Like you have, Jamar Chase, but he's got Jake Browning. And it goes back to like Dobbins is cheap, Hall is underpriced. Even Chase Brown's not expensive. So you can build lineups that get you to Tyreek Hill, that get you to Jamar Chase, that get you to Cortland Sutton without going to the backup running back. So you actually need RJ Harvey probably to beat J.K. Dobbins. You need, Ollie Gordon to beat J.K. Dobbins and beat Breece Hall. Like, I don't think it's going to be enough. Obviously, there are some ways this slate can play out where, 10 points or 11 points or 12 points from them is good. But, like, I don't think it's likely to be enough to just give you a good score for the salary because I don't think they're unlocking anything that you can't already get.
Yeah. No, so I agree with that. I think that J.K. Dobbins, that RJ Harvey is capable of outscoring. So he needs to outscore basically two, or he actually just needs to outscore one of the starting running backs, which I think he's totally capable of doing because he can play three with the flex. But I agree. Like you're right. We don't like benefit that much from the salary. Like obviously it matters a little bit if he like scores the same or just a little bit less than like J.K. Dobbins. Like the salary helps potentially depending on how the thing breaks out. But I do think like he can just score more raw points even without factoring in the salary.
Yeah, I think that's like that's probably a reason that they're not showing up for me, even though they are so low owned and they do make sense in that like narrative standpoint. I think it goes back to something like Brick has talked about a lot, where as people started using like Sims more and more, you go in with the thought that like, oh, I'm going to use a Sim and it's going to tell me where this like great low owned play is that I should be on. And really what they tell you most of the time is fuck the low owned plays. Like you should just be playing the good plays more. And that's sort of like how it's looking for me right now. Like in my head, if I'm hand building lineups, like I would just be throwing in some Ollie Gordon, I'd be throwing in some Harvey, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know that that's actually like the right. I don't know that they actually work out often enough to be worth it when you consider that they're not opening the door for anything else.
Yeah. I mean, that's a fair point. I think that I'm going to get there because again, I also think like you don't have that many great options ahead of him because it's a 2-game slate. So it's like it wouldn't be that shocking to me if RJ Harvey outscores Breece Hall, just like he has a limited workload. The only game where he's been targeted more than twice was the game that Justin Fields missed. Chase Brown has a really tough matchup, hasn't been able to get going at all. So he and doesn't need to beat out Devin Achane. You can play them in the same lineup. Doesn't actually need to beat out J.K. Dobbins. You can play them in the same lineup. So I think that there's like not enough opportunity costs that I still don't love the play, but also that is a good point that like you don't necessarily always need to be going to the worst plays. You can just play all of the best plays across 150, and I mean you can't play all of them, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, so like,
just play them.
To me, the best argument for getting to the backup running backs is probably comes down to dupes. Like there's not really any great publicly available Sims for dupes, and if there were, they wouldn't be good for very long because everybody would use them and then it's going to be bad. So you get into like I think that would be the argument. It's not so much like the argument would basically be that the Sims that are telling you to ignore these backup running backs are not making the correct assumptions on how often lineups are going to be duped. But then you get into, okay, but how often are people going to actually play these backup running backs? And are you going to get into that spot where it's like everybody that's aware of dupes is now playing RJ Harvey and Ollie Gordon to not get duped, and so you're just duping them a bunch anyway?
Yeah, that is fair. It is really hard with the Sims on like these dupe slates where you have to worry about dupes a little bit. It does get a little bit tougher. Yeah, it's you never really know going in. But just in terms of raw points, I think that RJ Harvey actually has upside here, and also has really big downside. Like clearly, like Sean Payton is full of shit, says things all the time. Like, oh, like he keeps on talking about wanting to get him more involved. Oh, RJ Harvey's a big part of our offensive plan, and then they just don't use him. So I think that they're going to at some point. But
do you have a lean on, like, let's say this game is 30-10 going to the fourth quarter? Do you have a lean on if it just becomes like RJ Harvey time, or do they keep giving Dobbins the ball? Do they just go straight to Bidet?
I don't think they would keep giving Dobbins the ball. I think they would use RJ Harvey in a blowout.
That's my assumption.
Yeah. I also think like in a close game. So we've talked about it before, like the size of the pie for running backs. I sort of think that this is a spot where if the pie for the running backs gets bigger, if they're just able to run all over the Broncos, I think it would be RJ Harvey who benefits. Like, I don't think it would be everybody moves up proportionally. I think it would be J.K. Dobbins maintains the workload that he has had, and then RJ Harvey picks up a bigger workload. And I don't think Tyler Bidet really factors in there. Which is part of the reason I like RJ Harvey, is that I think they could just be able to run all over this Bengals defense. People in chat pointed out, and this is true, like in terms of the trenches, like the offensive line and defensive line much better for the Broncos than the Bengals. They could just absolutely dominate this game. So even without a blowout, if the Bengals keep it closer, but they just run more, I think he benefits. But yeah, I think in the case where they're taking a lead, I think it would be RJ Harvey benefiting from the larger pie there.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Denver's been pass rate over expectations, been positive through the first 3 games. But again, this is a home game. The opposing team has like an 18-point total. The Bengals defense can't really stop you no matter what you want to do. You can kind of just do whatever you want. So you could certainly see that. And I would say too, not to the same extent, that kind of for different reasons. But I do think you could play Dobbins, Harvey together, just like you can play Achane, Gordon together. You can play, I mean, it's a 2-game slate. You can play Hall, Allen together too. But of the 3, certainly would feel the worst, I guess, about Brown and Brooks together. But putting that one aside, you can play them all together, but I would feel better about Gordon, Achane. I would say Gordon, Achane 1, Dobbins, Harvey 2, and then a bit of a gap, and then Allen, Hall. Just because I expect there to be less. I think that, I mean, Hall's cheap enough, I guess. Allen's expensive, so Allen needs touchdowns. And then Hall doesn't get the passing workload that Achane does. And that game doesn't have the same sort of like Dobbins could score 2 touchdowns. The Bengals do nothing offensively. And then it's just, Harvey time in the fourth quarter type possible narrative.
I think I have it almost the same order. I think I put Broncos 1 in terms of viability of playing the running backs together, just because of the price tag. Because Achane is expensive enough that like Gordon scoring a touchdown probably hurts him a little bit. I don't know, but it's close.
But like Achane, you can just like
with the PPR. That is true. A wide receiver, like if he has 8 catches, he can probably get there, regardless of scoring a touchdown. I think it's just the price tags and like how I envision this game going. This is another one where it's just like it's hard to see the Broncos not score a lot of points. So then it's like, well, I'll just play both running backs and they look great. But yeah, it's close between Broncos and Dolphins. And then I agree with you. There's a little gap before the Jets, and then another, I think, bigger gap before playing both Bengals together. Anything else about the running backs?
Give me 1 second.
Did you look up the Taj Brooks, whether he got it all in the second half?
First 3 quarters, 9 carries for Chase Brown, 4 for P. Ryan, 1 for Brooks. I don't know exactly when that 1 came, when the game got out of hand. First half of that game was 7 for Brown, 4 for P. Ryan, none for Brooks.
Okay. So yeah, it seems like it was probably all just blowout.
Fourth quarter was, I'm going to assume, pretty much Brooks. Probably 4 for Brooks, 1 for Brown. So 2, where to go? Rant said P. Ryan garbage touchdown, maybe more of a showdown play. I mean, if you're going garbage touchdown from the Bengals, I would go Brooks.
Yeah.
Like there's P. Ryan's your third down pass blocking back. He's a dusty veteran. Like if the game's out of hand, they're probably just giving Taj Brooks run.
Are you getting? It sounds like you're not getting any P. Ryan. Are you thinking about getting to any P. Ryan? Yeah, I don't know.
No, I mean, I would rather probably play any of the other. Yeah. I don't know if I'd rather play P. Ryan or Brooks, but like I'd rather play Harvey or Gordon or Allen.
Me too. Like, and now we'll see. Like, it's going to get the Broncos take a big lead and they just pass it into P. Ryan the entire game. Yeah. But yeah, I don't think I'm going to get there.
Into like Jerick McKinnon.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to receivers. Pretty interesting, I would say, just in general, just the running backs, actually both running backs and receivers, like you see a pretty big gap down in terms of ownership. Like it's kind of like gradual ownership drops and then just like bam, like this player is like single digits after the top tier. On the Jets, we have Garrett Wilson, clearly the leader of the pack, 6,200 projected for 77% ownership. Jets get Josh Reynolds back, presumably still going to be their wide receiver 2. He's 3,400 projected for 11.5% ownership. Tyler Johnson, Arian Smith, Alan Lazard. But it all starts with Garrett Wilson. How much are you getting to of Garrett Wilson?
I only have 26% right now, which I'm a little surprised by. I think obviously he looks good. Like he's run 100% of routes this year. Again, the Jets aren't going to throw a lot. They're projected for like 26.5 pass attempts, but a large percentage of those targets are going to go to Garrett Wilson. I think he's obviously a good play. I just don't have that much of him right now. I am getting more Sutton. I'm getting more Hill. I'm getting more Waddle and Chase. So yeah, I just don't have that much Wilson right now, but clearly a good play. 35% target percentage so far this season.
Yeah.
Next highest on the Jets is Josh Reynolds at 13% in that one game, 12.5% at all. Like he's going to get a lot of targets. That's what Justin Fields does.
Yeah, he's just going to hammer it to Garrett Wilson.
He's going to look at Garrett Wilson. If he's open, he'll throw him the ball. If he's not open, he will either run or throw it to Breece Hall, usually run.
Yep. Rarely, on rare occasions, he'll get to my guy, Josh Reynolds. Yeah, it's mostly going to be pretty concentrated on Garrett Wilson, most likely. I pulled up schedule adjusted for receivers here. Again, great matchup for Denver. Theme of the day, great matchup for Denver. For Miami, kind of a slightly below average, pretty neutral matchup there. Jets, slightly below average, mostly neutral there. And then finally a bad matchup for Cincinnati. We'll take a look at the splits there with the who's expected to cover who in terms of the, actually we can do that now, wide receiver cornerback matchup for the Jets, see if anything stands out here. Nobody expected to have shadow coverage here. Looks like it's a positive matchup for all of the Jets receivers here against Miami. Yeah, I would of course be concerned if I get to 23%. What are you using as Garrett Wilson's ownership to get to that number?
Good question. 64%.
Okay, so you actually have him lower owned than it is in Run the Sims, and you're still not getting.
Yeah,
much.
I'm looking now to see if I have like low ownership on anybody else. Hill at 56, so have Hill being a little bit lower than Wilson at a similar price. Sutton 55. So of that group that is in that like 6K to 6,500 range, I do have Wilson with more ownership slightly than Sutton or Hill, and then I'm getting more Sutton than Hill.
Interesting. Okay.
Which is I mean, if you assume that ownership plays out like that, that is what I would want to do. Like I think from a range of outcome standpoint, there's not a big difference between Sutton, Hill, whoever else I just said, Sutton, Hill, and Wilson. So I would be fine just kind of saying like, okay, if he's going to be the most popular one, he's the one the field wants, I'll just put more eggs into the Hill and Sutton basket and go with that. And if, ownership were flipped and Hill were the most popular, maybe I would just play, or probably I would just play more Sutton than Wilson, et cetera.
Yeah. Are you getting to any of the other Jets receivers, Josh Reynolds or Aaron Smith or anybody else?
I have like 5% Josh Reynolds right now. I projected him for like 80% route participation. I didn't want to go back to that full 100 just because it was one game and he is coming back from the hamstring injury and we don't know exactly what they're going to do. But with a 3% ownership projection, I got to like 5%.
Okay. Yeah, and then Run the Sims has it at 11.5% projected ownership. Yeah, he's probably the other one that I would consider. I guess you can consider in the large field. Allen Lazard, they've talked about like he I think signed with the team maybe after week 1, or I don't, maybe I'm wrong about that, but
yeah, he was inactive week 1.
Okay. Oh yeah. And then they're saying like he's still getting up to speed. So I don't know. I don't think I'd go there, a little bit too thin. Maybe Arian Smith just based on his route participation moving up. But again, I think that Josh Reynolds cuts into it. I don't really think I'm playing anybody other than Garrett Wilson and Josh Reynolds here.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a spot to pay attention to inactives as well. If Allen Lazard is active for this game, then that just kind of muddies the routes for that group anyway.
Yeah.
I assume that one of these wide receivers, probably Lazard, will be inactive. So that's definitely something to pay attention to. I think I'm not getting to any of the guys beyond Reynolds, but Tyler Johnson would be the one I think that I wanted to take a shot at third behind Reynolds.
Okay. It was 94% route participation week 2, 66% week 3. Seems fine. Dolphin side, we have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Malik Washington, all kind of interesting. Tyreek Hill, 6,500 projected for 55% ownership. Waddle, 5,500 projected for 28%. And then Malik Washington, 3,500 projected for 5% ownership. I guess Nick Westbrook-Ikine, maybe you consider also kind of a fine, not the worst matchup against the Jets. How much are you getting to the Dolphins receivers?
Getting to a good amount of Hill and Waddle. 59% on Hill puts me around the field, slightly higher, I think. 38%, 37% on Waddle, same thing, around the field, slightly higher. I had them projected at 55, 56%, whatever I'd said a minute ago for Tyreek Hill, and then Waddle coming in at 32%. So around the field, slightly higher, kind of similar to Tua as far as, how I'm getting to them relative to the field. Obviously, the upside is there. Like, if the Dolphins defense can get off the field and get the offense the ball, they generally are a pass heavy team with Tua, including using HN as, passes to HN as part of the running game, essentially. And that, a very large percentage of the targets are going to Hill and Waddle. Hill, a lot's been made, obviously, of like his lack of big games or big plays over the last year plus. You have to keep in mind that half of last year, Tua was not playing. And I mean, and then, the volatility that goes into everything. Like, yeah, Tua is a flawed quarterback and Hill is on the wrong half of his career. But, already this season, you've seen, I think it might have been against the Patriots. I don't remember. But you had Hill wide open for like a 50-plus yard play and Tua just missed him. Like, that's going to happen. But the upside is still there for Hill to make these big plays. He's reasonably priced. Waddle is reasonably priced. And one thing that I would point out with Miami, if you're looking at their overall targets or overall workload this season, keep in mind that in week 1, both Waddle and Hill got hurt and spent time on the sideline. So if you look at their route participation, it is a little bit artificially low. Week 1, Hill ran routes on 61% of dropbacks. Waddle was at 58%. As a result, you had 72% route participation for Washington, 42% for Westbrook, 36% for Eskridge. But again, both of those guys got hurt. Week 2 and 3, where they've managed to stay on the field, 90 and 92% for Hill, 85 and 89% for Waddle. It's pushed Washington down a little bit to 62 and 66. And then it's really pushed down Westbrook, Akine, and Eskridge to like low 20s, high teens for Westbrook Akine and sub 10% for Eskridge. So do keep in mind that is, if you're looking at the whole season, through 3 weeks for Hill and Waddle, you are going to get a little bit of a skewed picture because of week 1.
Yeah, that is a good point. Are you going to get any Malik Washington? It's sort of interesting. I mean, you do have him getting some of the running game work, 8% market share of the rushing work, 11.6% touchdown is kind of interesting. He's only 3,500. You getting 10 there?
I have like 2 or 3%.
Okay.
He's, you're counting on a big play. He's not going to get a lot of opportunities, but he is extremely athletic. He can make big plays. They'll give him a couple of carries. They'll, scheme him the ball a couple of times. They'll look to get the ball in his hands a little bit. It's kind of, past seasons like Keontae Turpin.
Yep. And then, I don't think you have to play any Nick Westbrook. I was thinking Nick Westbrook-Akine more involved than he is. He had some big plays last year, but not getting enough route participation to be really interesting here. All right. Moving on to the Bengals. And so here we can, and I'll pull up the wide receiver. Actually, we didn't look at it for, we are expecting Tyreek Hill. That's actually an important note. Tyreek Hill expected to be shadowed by Sauce Gardner. So it is a really tough matchup for Tyreek Hill. Maybe a benefit there to Jalen Waddle. How much Hill do you say you're getting to?
Like 56.
And then how much Waddle?
38, 37.
Okay. So you're over the field in terms of projected here. Just sort of interesting looking at those. I thought of it because I was going to look at the Bengals matchups because it's kind of the same thing where it's you're expecting a shadow for, or I assume we're expecting a shadow. Shadow Pat Surtain on Jamar Chase, which theoretically should benefit T. Higgins, Andre Yoshivas. Just something to note that we do have some tough cornerback matchups here. But moving on to the Bengals, again, Jamar Chase he's 8,000 projected for 76% ownership despite the Pat Surtain shadow situation. T. Higgins 5,600 projected for 31% ownership. Andre Yoshivas 3,100 projected for 5%. How much you get into of the Bengals receivers?
Yeah, so I have I'm under the field on Chase. I'm getting to him a decent amount in terms of raw numbers, but I only have 38%, have him projected for 64, 65%. Like you said, the matchup isn't ideal. I don't care about that a ton. Like, I would rather him not be defended by Patrick Surtain, but it's still Jamar Chase. The upside is still there. It's still a 2-game slate. But you also have Jake Browning at quarterback. You have a team with like an 18-point total. You're going to get a ton of ownership coming into Chase just because he is Jamar Chase. So I'm okay coming in below the field, but at the same time, like, he's still Jamar Chase on a 2-game slate. He's going to be fine. From a matchup standpoint, I am with you. Like, I think that it is, there's a lot of like narrative type stuff that you can point to for T. Higgins here, both from the matchup and from the quotes about, him getting more, not being happy with how uninvolved he's been through the first few weeks. You have all of that sort of working in his favor. That being said, I only have him in like 14, 15% of lineups right now, projected for 32% ownership. I'm not getting to any Yoshivas, and I do think that I could make a couple narrative cases for him as well. One, like you said, if Surtain is just shutting down Jamar Chase, which again, it's Jamar Chase, that's really hard to do. But if he is just shutting down Chase, that does open up more targets. But I talked about this in Discord a little bit when Burrow got hurt. If you go back and look at the 7 games that Browning started without Burrow in 2023, obviously he still targeted Chase and Higgins more than anybody else, but he didn't force the ball to Higgins and Chase as much as Burrow does. And that could be a sample size thing, but it would also make sense where it's just, he's not the same level of quarterback as Burrow. He's not necessarily going to take the same sort of risks where Jamar Chase is covered or T. Higgins is covered and Burrow is just going to say, screw it, I'm going to let them make a play. And you saw a pretty big increase in targets per route run for Yoshivas in those 7 games. We didn't see it in Browning's first start this year. And again, I'm not going to go too crazy with like projecting Yoshivas to start taking targets away from Chase and Higgins because those guys are so good. But we did see a more flattened target share from Browning in those 7 games where Yoshivas was actually a beneficiary, whereas Burrow really looks to push the ball to Higgins and Chase a lot more.
Yeah. Interesting quote on Andre Yoshivas this week. I think it was this week. Yeah. I mean, I guess not that interesting, but on the 22nd. So it was a week ago, head coach Zach Taylor said, Andre Yoshivas opportunities will come and will take shape over the course of the season. Make of that what you will. I guess to me, not that interesting, I guess, because it's not super informative. But maybe he is indicating that he'll get more work, get back to his workload. Again, last week we saw a big dip down to 45% route participation. How much do you say you're getting to of T. Higgins?
Like 15%.
Oh, really? T. Higgins is really interesting. Yeah, at 5,600.
I want more.
Yeah, so that's one. You might have to force it a little bit, but just because of the narrative street of like, all right, we've got the Pat Surtain cover and the squeaky wheel narrative coming together at the same time. I could just see T. Higgins, this being the game where T. Higgins does get force fed a little bit more to avoid that Surtain and just keep him happy. So I really like T. Higgins here. I think he's going to be one of my favorite wide receiver plays of the slate. Sounds like
I would really like to get. Sorry, I would really like to get more Higgins. Just the upside is there, and you can make that matchup narrative. And it like at 3,100, I just wouldn't be surprised if Yoshivas is more involved than anybody's expecting. And it's one of those like I don't think you can project it that way. Like I'm not gonna tell people like, oh yeah, no, actually they're just gonna not throw to Chase and Higgins nearly as much as you think, and it's gonna go to Yoshivas. But like this just feels like one of those spots where I'm gonna be watching the game and be really pissed off that I didn't take more of a stand on Yoshivas.
Yeah. Sorry, just got a question on my expert survey because I apparently put an extra capitalized E in T. Higgins and it's confusing people. Anything else on? We're not going to any Mitchell Tinsley. I know he scored a touchdown this year, but I don't know if we need to go there. Are you getting to any Mitchell Tinsley?
I'm not even getting to T. Higgins.
Right. Fair.
Yeah, no, I'm not getting to Mitchell Tinsley.
On the Broncos side, pretty interesting here. So we have Courtland Sutton, obviously the wide receiver 1, Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims, questionable. I guess I haven't looked at like what are the situation, the quotes there, what the likelihood that he plays if he's been limited or full. Maybe I have to look at that because Marvin Mims being out would be okay. If he was limited, there's a chance that he actually misses this game. But I think we can start with Courtland Sutton and Troy Franklin. How much you get into of the top receivers? And again, this is the best spot going against this Bengals defense just across the board. How much you get into of these Denver receivers?
Yeah, and for now, my assumption is that Mims plays because, again, I don't care to guess. We'll get this information. But with Mims projected in, I'm getting to 72% Sutton. 6,100 looks good. Matchup's good. I'm getting a lot of Bo Nix. Franklin, I'm getting to 36% at 4,100. He's cheap. The routes have been there. I still think that there is plenty of volatility behind Courtland Sutton. We historically, Sean Payton kind of has a wide receiver 1 and then rotates his other guys. Sutton obviously is the wide receiver 1, but we have seen 2 weeks in a row now where Troy Franklin's run 90+% routes, up from 65% week 1. I still think that there is volatility, 1, in obviously how he produces on the field, but then 2, like, you're going to just probably, get weeks here and there where for whatever reason that comes down and Mims plays more, or maybe Patrick Bryant gets more involved, whatever it may be. But I think the assumption now should be that Troy Franklin is the number 2, even if Mims is good to go. Obviously, if Mims is out, that becomes a little bit more solidified. But I had kind of made the case last week that everybody was going to be interested in Troy Franklin because you saw the big game in week 2, and that there is still just all this volatility between Mims and Franklin. And Mims, if I remember correctly, had like 2 long passes go off his fingertips, or like just missed him from Nix. Even if Mims is, let's say, for the sake of argument, he's active, but let's say that, he is just locked into this wide receiver 3 role now, and he is going to run, 60% of routes while Franklin runs 90. In a 1-game sample, you still don't have that much of a difference in range of outcomes between Franklin and Mims. You have a difference in projection because Franklin is likely to be on the field more, but from just a big play standpoint and getting there in a 1-game sample, the range of outcomes is still going to be pretty similar for those guys. So I'm getting to both of them. Have ownership projections right now, again, of like 4% on Mims, which is incredibly low at 3,600, 25% on Franklin at 4,100. So over the field on both of them, more obviously relative to the field on Mims.
I'm sort of with OMG Lowe's here. It says, man, if Chase is going to be 70% owned because people don't like the idea of leaving over $1,000 in salary, I'm prioritizing lineups without Chase. I kind of think that I'm going to be doing the same. Like, I think I'll probably end up under the field on Chase and just playing some of those receivers that are less expensive than him that I think could outscore him, like T. Higgins, just like have a lineup that's using the full salary and pivot down from Jamar Chase to T. Higgins, those kind of lineups. I think those are going to look pretty good tonight. Yeah.
And that's actually, I hadn't really thought about it when we were talking about running backs, but like I have so many lineups right now that are leaving a lot on the table without playing backup running backs.
Right.
That's kind of another thing pointing me towards thinking like they might just not be necessary outside of the largest field tournaments.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I have lineups now where, and it's not ideal, but also it's enough probably to be different where, I have like Marvin Mims in Denver stacks instead of T. Higgins or, something like that. Obviously, I would rather have T. Higgins, but so would everybody else.
Right.
But yeah, a lot of lineups where I'm leaving salary on the table and like I could get the Chase, but don't.
Anything else on receivers here?
No. If Mims does miss, then again, it helps solidify Troy Franklin, but it does also open up like 60-ish% route participation. Trent Sherfield has been pretty consistent, running around 30% of routes so far this season. Pat Bryant has been the one that mostly isn't utilized, except for week 2. You only got 42% routes from Mims. Bryant ran 26%. So I do think it's likely you would see a big spike in routes for Pat Bryant if Mims misses this one.
Yeah. And maybe, who knows, it would be enough that he becomes viable. But I think he's probably the next most interesting after, obviously, it's Sutton, Franklin, Mims if he's active, and then if Mims misses, probably Pat Bryant as also just the rookie who they drafted him pretty early. You could think about playing him if Mims is out, might be viable, but not a priority by any means. All right, let's move on to tight ends.
Oh, I wanted to say, because I went back and looked. I misspoke when I said that Browning had increased Yoshivas's target share. They had Tyler Boyd back then. So Boyd was running, ahead of Yoshivas, but you did have, Chase's target share looking back at these games that Browning started 23, 24, 32, 16, 10, 23, 21. Higgins 8, 16, 20, 26. So you did see Chase and Higgins flatten out. It just happened that it wasn't necessarily Yoshivas benefiting because he was buried on the depth chart that year.
Right. Okay. All right, moving on to tight ends. Now, again, Mason Taylor is where we're going to start, and it's been pretty interesting. The coach speak surrounding Mason Taylor a lot more positive than the actual involvement. On the 25th, so just this week, head coach Aaron Glenn said, we got to get Mason Taylor the ball. We got to get Breece Hall the ball. Those guys are good playmakers for us, and we're doing everything we can to make sure we do that. We got to do everything we can to try and get Mason Taylor more involved. He's a dynamic player for us when the ball gets in his hands. Even when the ball isn't in his hands, he's a guy that we all recognize needs to get the ball. He needs to get it. Breece Hall needs to get it. These guys are playmakers for us. So they kept on repeating, like, it's Breece Hall and Mason Taylor are the two that are not getting the ball that need to get the ball. I thought that was interesting because it's like, I don't think of Mason Taylor as being the same level of playmaker as Breece Hall, but
nor should you.
Coaches, the coaches seem to think that he is somebody they need to get the ball to. So maybe he gets there this week, but the ownership unfortunately is also there. He's 2,700 projected for 39% ownership. So far, not that great. How much are you getting to of Mason Taylor?
I'm getting like 12% right now. Obviously, he's really cheap, but like you don't need the savings at all. So it's kind of, I think it's an ownership game at tight end, and then also, just a raw score game. I'm getting, I have 6% of him. Again, like he's fine, but if I get beat because Justin Fields' second or third option goes off, then so be it. I do say that fully keeping in mind that I got beat multiple times by Cole Kmet the weeks that Justin Fields and Cole Kmet just decided to go nuclear a couple years ago. But I mean, if the Mason Taylor game happens to be on the slate where he's 30 whatever percent owned, then so be it. I do think that there are pivots in that range. I have 12% Adam Troutman, which obviously I'm not expecting much there, but he's going to be like 1% owned instead of 25, 30. That's someone you can go to. I have more Evan Ingram at 3,700. There are, obviously some issues there with how often is he going to be on the field, dealing with injury, all of that. But yeah, you just don't need the savings. So really it becomes a raw point play. And I think the ownership is just higher than it should be.
Yeah, the ownership does seem a little bit high. Are you getting
Taylor showing up as optimal 17% of the time, and I haven't projected for like 30% ownership.
And signing says Ruckert for all the bunnies. This does actually seem like a slate where the backup tight ends are maybe a little bit more viable because none of the starting tight ends look that great. So like if you just get a random touchdown out of a Jeremy Ruckert or something, maybe that's viable. I guess Ruckert himself doesn't like scream super interesting to me, but he's 2,500. Are you getting to any there?
Not Ruckert, but I'm again making that same play basically with like Adam Troutman at 2,600. I have a lineup with Tanner Connor. I have a lineup or two lineups with Lucas Kroll. But yeah, I mean, I think that's obviously the backup tight ends here are not as appealing as the backup running backs, but I kind of think they make more sense in that there are no good tight ends on the slate. You have Jasicki, you have Ingram, they're fine, but the opportunity cost, like you can play maximum 3 running backs. I can name 3 running backs I want and that project really well. I can't really name one tight end that I want.
Yeah, no, I think that I agree with you from like, it's just from a slate specific standpoint. It's just like the tight ends are so weak that like clearly this is a spot where the backup tight end who randomly spikes and scores 10 fantasy points could gap the field, like could score 6 more than the next best tight end. So
yeah, like I don't have Drew Sample right now, but absolutely can play Drew Sample as a pivot away from Mason Taylor.
Yeah, I think Drew Sample's a fine. I actually think Jeremy Ruckert, I think that's a fine call out, like in a 150 set, largest field stuff. Yeah, totally fine play. Not a priority, but like, yeah, maybe mix them in a little bit. On the other side, we have Darren Waller, who is, who knows, like a big shrug what his workload is going to be. The coaches have talked about like bringing him along slowly. Again, I don't think he's played yet this year. Maybe am I wrong about that? Let's check.
He hasn't.
Yeah, he has not played yet this year. So we really don't know what to expect from Miami. I guess the bull case would be they really used Jonnu Smith quite a bit last year. I don't think that Darren Waller is the same thing. They have not been using tight end this year. I'm not expecting a ton here, but who knows? He could surprise. He's been talented in past years. Are you getting to any $3,500 Darren Waller project for 5% ownership here?
I'm getting very little. I have 4%. I don't really know what the priors should look like on a formerly talented tight end that retired to become a rapper that stopped rapping and came back to play tight end. Don't really know what that looks like. I do know that his receiving prop right now is 11.5 yards. I've said it before that I think like tailoring projections to props is generally not the best approach because we know it's a beatable market. But I do look to them as just as a data point in a situation like this where they said that they expect Waller to be on a pitch count. We have no idea what it's going to look like here for the reasons I mentioned before. So I do think that is somewhat telling at least. But again, the prop market is not super efficient. Look at Chris Godwin yesterday. Like I bet his over, I lost, but he ran his receiving prop it was like 30.5 yards. It got up to like 35.5. And then he was out there running routes on every single drop back pretty much. Like obviously the market was just completely wrong. And you could get that here with Darren Waller. They said he was going to be limited, but coaches lie, and we don't know what limited means. Is limited normally he's going to run 80% of routes, and this week he's going to run 60. My expectation is that you're getting a three-way timeshare between him and Julian Hill and Tanner Connor, which is really gross for all of them, and Waller would be the most appealing. But again, there is a lot of just like input volatility there where if you wanted to just guess that Waller plays more than everybody else, it's not like the opportunity cost for being wrong is super high.
Yeah, that's a good call. And again, I don't think they're going to use him like they were using Johnny Smith. I think that was a very specific thing where they talked about it a lot last year. Mike McDaniel kept on being like, the fact that we haven't used tight ends in the past doesn't mean we're not going to be using tight ends this year. Like kept on bringing that up. Like we might use tight ends a little bit different this year. And then sure enough, and they talked about how much they loved Johnny Smith from a yak perspective, and they used him in that way where it's like get him the ball in his hands, let him do work. I don't think Darren Waller is the same thing, but who knows? Maybe they do have some other plans for Darren Waller. So totally a viable play, but not a priority by any means. Cincinnati going to be without Noah Fant. So we're looking at Mike Gesicki. Mike Gesicki, I guess, without Noah Fant, maybe sort of interesting here, but then no Joe Burrow. He's 2,900 projected for 41% ownership. Then you've got Sample and Hudson, both at the min price, not projected for much ownership. What are you doing with the Cincinnati tight ends?
Yeah, I have 46% Gesicki. I do actually like him here. I mean, we've talked about the tough matchup for Chase and that potentially benefiting Higgins, potentially benefiting Yoshivas. It also potentially benefits Gesicki, and the opportunity cost is non-existent there. And then, like you said, Fant is out. We've seen up and down route participation so far for Gesicki, where weeks 1 and 3, he pretty much split time with Fant, even ran a few routes less than Fant. Week 2, though, he did get up to 65% route participation while Fant was at 25%. So you had Gesicki kind of banged up in the preseason. I do like that we did see in week 2 him actually go out there and run more routes because physically he can do it. So I don't really have that concern of like, is he capable of running 65% of routes this week? Because we've already seen him do that. So I do expect him to be on the field more without Fant. But also, Drew Sample, 41% route participation in week 1 with Fant active, 47% last week. Like you've gotten a three-way timeshare at tight end so far this season where Sample has eclipsed 40% twice already. I do think you could see him out there a good amount as well. I don't have him right now, but I actually would like to have some by the time we get the lock because I do think he plays a relatively big role in the Bengals offense, which again, in this game is not a exciting spot to be in, but I do think he's going to at least be out there running routes.
Yeah. And again, it's just like a random, like the backup tight end score the touchdown. Like we talk about on Showdown all the time. It's again on this slate because there's not much opportunity cost suddenly becomes pretty viable. So I don't hate that shout out. Final tight ends. So this is maybe the most interesting tight end spot. Evan Ingram, we kind of thought was going to be, everybody talked about the Joker role. He's going to be the Sean Payton Joker role this year. We haven't really seen it from Evan Ingram yet. There's still some positive coach speak this week. But he's 3,700 projected for 14% ownership. You've got Kroll and Troutman. Kroll is 2,500, Troutman 2,600. Ingram missed the last game, but he is coming back for this one. In that last game, Lucas Kroll 47% route participation. He hadn't really done much in the games with Ingram active. What are you doing with the Broncos tight ends?
Yeah, I'm getting about 30% of Ingram. Don't really know what to do with his route participation because he did miss the last game. He left somewhat early in week 2. We saw 42% route participation week 1, but then it did get up to 58% week 2. So I don't really have a great feel. I think that there is a lot of volatility there for, are they going to just kind of ease him back in, try and keep him healthy, run a 3-way rotation with him and Troutman and Kroll? Obviously they can do that. And the less competitive the game is, the easier it is to make that case as well. But there is the bull case on him too, where if, you look back tomorrow morning and, if somebody could guarantee you that you're going to look back tomorrow morning and Evan Ingram's going to have run 70% of routes, you would just be slamming Evan Ingram into as many lineups as you can. I have him at 25% ownership, but even there, if you knew that he's just going to run 75% of routes, you would just be slamming him in everywhere. And that is possible. I don't think it's the most likely case. I think the most likely case is kind of a relatively ugly 3-way split in terms of route participation, but even that can get it done for Ingram. I think he's the second best tight end behind Gesicki. You're muted.
Yeah, I know. I was coming back to unmute myself. Yeah, I think I agree with you. He is one of the more interesting spots on the slate. The coach speak has also been pretty positive here. So on September 19th, Sean Payton said Evan Ingram is going to play a big role for us this year. So we hadn't seen it yet. Then he missed that following game, but at least Payton is saying that he's going to play a big role for the Broncos this year. On the 26th, offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi was asked what hasn't clicked yet for Evan Ingram. He said, I don't know if there's anything that hasn't clicked. A little bit like with the running backs, we've got a bunch of tight ends that we like, and they all do different things well. We're aware of what Ingram's strengths are, and he'll be getting going here real soon, I think. And then on the 27th, head coach Sean Payton said, Evan Ingram is a full go. He's playing this week. On how important of a piece Ingram is in the offense right now, he said, I think there are certain matchups, third down and red zone come to mind, where a better offense with him on the field. Kind of promising, saying he's going to be a big part of the offense. Red zone is an important place for him. So some nice coach speak there. That's funny, Josh. Any other tight end notes?
Yeah, we didn't mention it with the Bengals, but somebody mentioned it in chat, and they're right. Tanner Hudson hadn't been active, but he is somebody that, assuming he is active here, could certainly pick up additional routes. So do pay attention to inactives, because you have what's it, Gandy?
Cam Grandy.
Yeah, Grandy as a potential third tight end, Hudson as a potential third tight end. One of those guys is probably going to be out there running some routes. My guess, again, is that the two primary guys are going to be Gesicki, Hudson, and then you're going to get one of those as the third guy. But this is another spot where there is volatility, where maybe Hudson just is active and runs a similar route, runs similar routes to Sample, and I'm just wrong, and you could have this unknown tight end.
Yeah, for sure. Like that call out.
There's a lot of spots on this slate where when you're trying to project this game, there's always, there's some spots where you're just confident, and like obviously you're going to be wrong all the time because of variance and whatever. But like when you're looking at what you expect to happen, there's a lot of spots where you're confident, and then there's going to be times when you're just like making loosely educated guesses. And this slate in particular has quite a few of the loosely educated guess type spots.
It really does. Yeah, it's an interesting for a 2-game slate. A lot of pretty interesting spots here. Do you have any?
I will use this not even to market directly, but if you are using the Run the Sims projections, it's one thing that I think is great about the product is you can just, without having to do any guesswork and like manipulate the actual point projections, you can say, well, what lineups look the best if, let's say the most likely outcome is that Darren Waller runs 35% of routes. But we know that it's possible he runs 55%. What do the best lineups look like if he runs 55%? Let me run that, and I'm going to play, the top 3 or 4 lineups from that scenario. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the Broncos, where Ingram is more or less limited, or, the Bengals, where maybe Hudson plays more or Sample plays more. Like you can actually get the answers to, well, what's it look like if this happens or that happens? And then you can grab, a few lineups from those and mix them into what you're playing.
Look at Adam selling. You never see Adam making a sell here, making the hard sell. Yeah, no, that's what I love about Run the Sims. I've talked about a lot. Like I really do like the customizability for me. has always been an issue with Sims products. And it's the reason that I've never really gotten into Sims products until this year. And I've started using it. And it's like, yeah, you can just manipulate things to say, like, I think that it's actually more likely than most people think that RJ Harvey is going to take on a bigger share of this workload, and they're just going to run a little bit more than expected. And you can just make those changes and see what looks good when you do make those assumptions. Yeah, love that shout. By the way, you can use promo code Neil to get 10% off your first payment on any product at Run the Sims.
You can use not promo code Neil and pay full price. Thanks.
Don't do that. Use promo code. All right. Defenses. Do you have any thoughts on the any defenses here? I mean, looks like the Broncos 42% projected ownership. Then it becomes a little interesting if they do get 42% ownership. I mean, you've got the Dolphins playing against Justin Fields. Seems like a fine spot. Honestly, defenses against Tua doesn't seem that bad to me. I don't really have any strong takes here, except for if one of these defenses is going to be mega chalk, I probably want to not play them as much of the field.
Yeah, I'm pretty flat here. I have 35% of Denver. I have 36% of the Jets, and then like 15-ish% of Miami and Cincy. Like Cincinnati obviously is in the least appealing spot, but everybody also knows that. And so on a 2-game slate, when there's so much volatility in defenses, you can give up 30 points and still be the winning defense because you run back a punt or whatever. And both games are high scoring or something like that. So ownership obviously is going to drive a lot here. Denver is the defense that I would want the most, and the price doesn't matter. Sometimes defense is as simple as saying, like, I just want to pay the least, but that's more so on the slates where, like, you have Christian McCaffrey, you have Puka, you have, Bijan Robinson. Like, obviously you don't have that kind of slate here. So the salary doesn't matter. Denver clearly going to be the defense that you would want the most, but that is going to come with the most ownership as well. The Jets, probably the one that you want the second most, and they're the one that I have the second most. Tua is a statue back there. He obviously is capable of getting sacked quite a bit. But mostly I'm just in line with the field on defenses here. I don't think that there's any I don't see any angles that I think are super interesting that aren't just blatantly obvious.
Yep. Anything else to shout out before we get out of here?
No, I think that's it.
All right, we're going to get out of here. Please, again, check out. Please like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already done so. Again, I will be back at 4 Central, 5 Eastern to break down this slate. Again, we'll get inactives at least for the first game while I'm live later. I'll talk a little bit more about the showdown slates as well on that stream. You can use promo code Neil if you want to get 10% off your first payment on any Run the Sims product. Appreciate you all, and we'll see you later.